On Sunday, Israeli forces destroyed the last functioning part of the last functioning hospital in Gaza City in northern Gaza as it continues to escalate its bombing of the Strip after shattering the ceasefire agreement last month. So what you saw there was flames and smoke rising up from the building and the fear and confusion of people on the ground. Witnesses said the Israeli airstrike destroyed the Al-Aqli Arab Baptist Hospital's intensive care and surgery departments. One child with a head injury died in what has been described as a rushed evacuation process, where the IDF gave patients, medical staff and displaced families sheltering in an interior courtyard just 20 minutes to leave. One father, Khalil Bakr, told BBC Arabic, "It was terrifying. The whole situation was difficult because I have already been injured. And as for my 3 daughters, one had her leg amputated, the other had her hand amputated, and the third had her body full of platinum plates. Only 2 minutes separated us from death." The impact on Palestinians in northern Gaza will be severe. The BBC's Gaza correspondent said this.
The only and remaining hospital is not functioning anymore. This is the only hospital in Gaza City where about 900,000 people live. And the nearest hospital is in the middle of Gaza Strip called Al-Aqsa Hospital. And the road between the north and the south is closed. So the people are left without any medical facility.
The Baptist Hospital is one of the oldest in Gaza and run by the Episcopal Diocese of Jerusalem, part of the Anglican Church. And the diocese said it was, quote, appalled by the bombing and highlighted that it occurred on Palm Sunday, which is the start of the Christian Holy Week. The diocese reported that surrounding buildings, including St. Philip's Church, were also damaged by the Israeli airstrike. And the attack has drawn international condemnation from the foreign ministries of Qatar, Jordan, and the UK. Foreign Secretary David Lammy posted this on X. Israel's attacks on medical facilities have comprehensively degraded access to healthcare in Gaza. Al-Aqli Hospital has been attacked repeatedly since the conflict began. These deplorable attacks must end. Diplomacy, not more bloodshed, is how we will achieve a lasting peace. And of course, David Lammy is Foreign Secretary of a G7 country, so he could do something more significant than tweeting out condemnations. But there we are. The Archbishop of York, Stephen Cottrell, has also made a statement. He says the Anglican-run Al-Aqli Hospital in Gaza is a place of healing and care for Palestinians living through unimaginable suffering. In unbearable conditions, its heroic doctors and nurses have cared for civilians who have endured 18 months of devastating violence. For the only Christian hospital in Gaza to be attacked on Palm Sunday is especially appalling. I share in the grief of our Palestinian brothers and sisters in the Diocese of Jerusalem. The Al-Aqli Arab Baptist Hospital is one of 36 hospitals in Gaza that have been bombed and burned by Israel since the beginning of its genocidal war on the besieged enclave. Israel has attacked hospitals with US-supplied 200-pound bombs, and this is despite the fact that the targeting of health facilities, medical personnel, and patients is considered war crime under the 1949 Geneva Convention. On Sunday, the IDF admitted it had targeted the hospital, claiming that it was a, quote, Hamas command and control center. This is a pattern you'll be used to. The Israeli military repeatedly justifies flagrant and obvious war crimes such as the killing of aid workers, medical staff, and the targeting of healthcare and civilian infrastructure by saying they were Hamas, or we thought they were Hamas, or Hamas were operating there. They were behaving like Hamas. They didn't have the flashing lights on, even though all of the videos afterwards show they did have the flashing lights on. Right, so it's lies after lies after lies. The BBC came under fire for its coverage of the attack, leading with this headline, Gaza hospital hit by Israeli strike, Hamas says. So the Hamas says, obviously trying to undermine the story essentially. It received a community note on X where readers pointed out that Israel had in fact taken responsibility for the attack, which made the framing of Hamas says misleading. Hours later, the BBC updated its headline to this, Israeli airstrike destroys part of last fully functional hospital in Gaza City, which is a much more objective headline, I think. Ash, your thoughts on this? Again, sort of a bit of a dissonance because we've shown an interview with BBC's Gaza correspondent, which was sort of instructive, and now we're critiquing them for these headlines. But I think one thing this sort of points out is how big an organisation it is, and what Owen Jones showed in that reporting he did for Dropsite News is there is a particular problem when it comes to the BBC website and their Middle East section, whereas often their website and the Middle East section where the coverage is much more friendly towards Israel and much more biased against Palestinians than other parts of the organization?
Well, look, an organisation the size of the BBC is bound to be a site of political contestation and conflict. In particular, that will play out over coverage of Israeli war crimes in the occupied territories and also the West Bank. Um, the BBC understands that when it tells a story where the facts themselves indict Israeli government practices, that they will be inundated with complaints by organised pro-Israeli advocates here in the UK. They understand that. And in my mind, any media organisation worth its salt should be prepared to withstand that. Let them talk, let them complain. Your job is to do journalism. The problem is that you have people within the BBC at varying levels of seniority, but going all the way from the board downwards, whose political ideology is in alignment with the goals of the Israeli state. So it means you've got kind of a pincer movement. You've got the complaints coming from the outside. You've got pressure being applied from the inside. And that shapes the BBC's coverage of what's happening with regards to Israel and Palestine. When it comes to Al Akli Hospital, obviously this genocide has been waged since October 2023, and there have been so many horrors and so many massacres and so many clear breaches of the rules of war that it might be easy to forget individual ones. But you may recall in 2023 that there were explosions at the Al Akli Hospital. There were lots of casualties. Initially, the report suggested as many as 400. That got revised downwards. And there was this huge controversy where Israel's advocates and indeed the Israeli government were saying, how dare you say that this was the result of an Israeli airstrike? It was a misfired Hamas rocket. Now, this is something that Israel says all the time. Whenever an airstrike hits civilian infrastructure or has a high number of civilian casualties, you'll very often hear them say, well, it was a misfired Hamas rocket. The media so often finds itself being disciplined by, again, this inside-outside pincer movement of complaints and internal advocates. It walked back its original reporting and said, oh, no, it wasn't an Israeli airstrike. After all, it was a misfired Hamas rocket. And then forensic architecture, investigated, looked at the footage and said, actually, this looks like it could have been an Israeli interceptor. So part of the Iron Dome framework, which then fell and hit the Al Akli Hospital. But what you may recall during that entire episode was that you had Israeli government spokespeople, IDF spokespeople, Israel's advocates in English-speaking media saying, how dare you suggest that Israel would deliberately target medical infrastructure? How dare you suggest it? It's disgusting, it's bloodlust, it's anti-Semitic, rare. Now, what's quite notable is that when Israel bombs a hospital, they no longer feel the need to pretend that it's a misfired Hamas rocket. They just said, yeah, we did that shit. Yeah, we did it. Oh, it was a Hamas command and control center. Oh, what? We didn't find any command and control center at Al-Shifa Hospital when we invaded it and took it over and, marched away doctors and nurses to military detention, stripped them and hand-tied them and blindfolded them. Oh, this is just another command and control center. So the fact that Israel is flaunting the fact that it attacks medical infrastructure, that it doesn't feel the need to go through stage one of the lie anymore of it was a misfired Hamas rocket. I think that tells you something about how it perceives the leeway that it has internationally basically they're war dogs that have been let off the leash. There is no significant diplomatic pressure. There is no country of sufficient strength willing to exercise its leverage. They can do what they want. Their breaches of international law, the Geneva Conventions, can be ever more flagrant. And why? Because they can.